I never thought a birthday cake could end my relationship with my in-laws, but that's exactly what happened. Picture this. I'm standing in the middle of a crowded living room, people laughing, glasses clinking, Sharon, my mother-in-law, glowing like she's the queen of the night. And then suddenly, all eyes turn to my husband, or rather to Diane, his ex, who has him by the arm like she's claiming a prize. She waves her hand in the air, flashing a ring she's kept for a decade, and announces their almost anniversary, as if I'm invisible. Then, as if the humiliation wasn't enough, Sharon cheers her on and actually tries to feed my husband a slice of cake meant to celebrate his promised love to another woman. In that instant, the room goes silent, except for the sound of my own heart pounding in my chest. My husband's face turns red, anger boiling beneath the surface, and for the first time in years he explodes. Words fly out of his mouth that shake everyone in that room, words he'd been holding back for far too long, and that's when I realized this wasn't just about me or Diane or even Sharon. It was about years of manipulation, favoritism, and a family dynamic so toxic it could poison anyone who touched it. But how did we get here? Well, that story starts long before the cake. When I first met Sean, I thought I had stumbled into one of those rare love stories that just fall into place effortlessly. We had known each other since high school, always in the same circles but never truly close. Years later, when life finally brought us back together, it felt easy, natural, like reconnecting with an old song you'd forgotten you loved. But of course there was history, and her name was Diane. She and Sean had been together since they were kids, middle school sweethearts, the kind of couple everyone thought would end up married just because they'd lasted so long. By the time I came into the picture, she was long gone, or so I thought. See, Diane wasn't just Sean's ex. She was also Sharon's dream daughter-in-law. Sharon, my mother-in-law, treated Diane like royalty. They had this strange bond built on gossip, compliments, and, let's be real, Diane's ability to charm and perform. She was the golden girl, conventionally beautiful, always polished, and Sharon ate it up like it was candy. Even after the breakup, Sharon refused to let go. Just because they ended things doesn't mean I have to, she told Sean once, and she meant it. So when I entered the family picture, I wasn't just the new girlfriend. I was competition. Sharon made sure of that. And the battlefield? Every single family event. Holidays, birthdays, Sunday dinners, you name it. Diane was there, smiling sweetly, cracking little jokes at my expense, making comparisons that cut sharper than any insult. At first, I told myself I could handle it. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. But the truth? Every smirk, every backhanded compliment ate at me little by little. And worse, Sean, caught in the middle, was forced to sit through years of these performances. Looking back, maybe that's when the cracks in our story really began to form. The first time it happened, I brushed it off. We were at Sharon's house for Thanksgiving, and as I helped set the table, she looked me up and down and said, "You're not really much of a cook, are you? Diane used to make the best pumpkin pie. Sean loved it." I laughed politely, pretending it didn't sting, but inside, it did. Then it became a pattern. At Christmas, Diane was invited to sing carols with the family while I sat awkwardly on the couch, watching my boyfriend's mother beam with pride. On Sean's birthday, Sharon actually gave Diane the job of cutting his cake, while I was left handing out plates like a stranger. Each time I told myself I was being too sensitive, that if I ignored it, maybe it would fade. But it didn't fade. It escalated. By the time Sean and I got engaged, Sharon's favoritism wasn't subtle anymore. It was a weapon. "You know, Diane was always the one I pictured walking down the aisle with Sean," she said once, smiling right at me. She just fit the family better. That one cut deep. Not because I believed her, but because I could see the way she looked at Diane, with pride, with love, the same way she looked through me, as if I were temporary, disposable. Diane, of course, played her role perfectly. Sweet in front of others, but sharp when no one else was listening. Little digs like, "I hope you don't mind that Sharon still calls me her daughter. It's just, we're so close." Or, "I guess some bonds can't be broken." Always with that perfect smile that made me look insecure if I ever reacted. And every single event, Sean would squeeze my hand under the table, silently begging me not to cause a scene. I didn't. Not then. But resentment has a way of building, stacking one insult on top of another until it's unbearable. I didn't know it yet, but Sharon and Diane were pushing us toward a breaking point, and sooner or later, something was bound to snap. It finally happened one evening at a family barbecue, the kind of casual get-together where everyone's supposed to relax, eat too much, and laugh around the fire pit. But with Sharon and Diane in the same space, casual never existed. I was sitting beside Sean, sipping lemonade, when Sharon called everyone over. "Come look at this," she said, waving her phone. On the screen were photos from years ago, pictures of Sean and Diane at prom, vacations they'd taken together, even a video of them slow dancing at some long-forgotten wedding. Sharon laughed like it was the sweetest thing in the world. They were such a beautiful couple. Don't you all agree? Everyone chuckled awkwardly, unsure how to respond. And then Diane, with her flawless timing, leaned against Sean's shoulder, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "We really were good together, weren't we?" she said, her voice dripping with nostalgia. The air around me froze. I felt every eye in that backyard shift toward us, waiting to see how I'd react. My hands trembled, but before I could say anything, Sharon twisted the knife even deeper. "Sometimes I think fate made a mistake. Some people just belong together." That was it. I stood up so fast my chair nearly toppled. "Do you hear yourself?" My voice cracked, but it carried. "Do you have any idea how cruel this is? To sit here in front of me and pretend like I don't exist?" My chest was tight, my pulse racing, but the words poured out anyway. "I'm his wife. I'm the one building a life with him now. And if you can't respect that, then maybe you don't deserve to be part of our life at all." Silence, stunned faces. Sharon's eyes narrowed, Diane smirked, and Sean, God bless him, finally stood up too. He wrapped his arm around me and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "She's right. This ends now." But Sharon wasn't ready to let go. And what she did next would drag this toxic game to its ugliest chapter yet. The birthday party that shattered everything. Sharon's birthday was supposed to be simple. A dinner, some cake, family around the table. But with her, nothing was ever simple. The moment we walked in, I felt the shift in the air. Sharon was radiant, dressed like she was hosting a royal gala, and right beside her, of course, was Diane, holding a bouquet of flowers Sharon had probably bragged about for weeks. The two of them greeted each other like long-lost sisters, laughing, hugging, whispering. When Sharon finally turned to me, all I got was a quick nod, as if I were an afterthought in her own son's life. Dinner dragged on in a blur of Diane this and Diane that. Sharon praised her job, her looks, her grace. Every compliment was a knife twisted into my ribs. Sean kept shooting me nervous glances, but he didn't speak up. Not yet. Then came the cake. Everyone gathered around as Sharon stood proudly at the head of the table, and in front of everyone, family, friends, neighbors, she raised her glass. "Before we cut the cake, I just want to say how blessed I feel, not only to celebrate another year, but to have my dearest Diane here with me. You're the daughter I always dreamed of. Truly, you're the one who belongs in this family." The room went silent. I froze, and then I heard it. Diane's laugh, soft but sharp, meant only for me. That was the final straw. I slammed my glass down, the sound echoing across the room. "Enough. I am done being humiliated in front of this entire family." My voice shook, but it carried, and every eye locked on me. "Sharon, I have sat here for years while you paraded Diane around as if she were your chosen one. I have smiled through the insults, through the comparisons, through every cruel little reminder that I will never be good enough for you. But let me make one thing very clear. I am Sean's wife. I am the one who shares his life, his love, his future, and you will not erase me." Gasps filled the room. Sharon's face twisted in outrage. Diane tried to hide her smirk, but the damage was done. Then Sean stood. His voice was steady, strong. "Mom, this has gone too far. If you can't accept my wife, if you can't respect our marriage, then maybe it's time we stop coming around, because I won't let you hurt her anymore." Sharon's mouth fell open. Diane shifted uncomfortably, and for the first time, the power they held over me cracked right in front of everyone. That birthday was supposed to be Sharon's triumph. Instead, it became the day the mask finally shattered. The silence after my outburst was deafening. For a moment, no one moved, no one breathed. It was as if the entire room had been frozen in shock. Then came the whispers. A cousin nervously cleared his throat. One of Sean's uncles mumbled something about, maybe we should cut the cake. But the atmosphere had shifted permanently, like a storm had just torn through and no one knew what to do with the wreckage. Sharon, still standing at the head of the table, looked like she'd been slapped. Her face flushed crimson, her lips trembling with rage, but no words came. She was too stunned to strike back. Diane, on the other hand, tried to fill the silence with a dismissive laugh. Wow, someone's dramatic. Her voice carried, but no one laughed with her. In fact, people looked away, embarrassed. For the first time, her perfect mask cracked. Sean's hand was on my back, steady and firm. He didn't just stand beside me. He stood with me. "We're leaving," he said, his voice calm but unshakable. He didn't ask permission. He didn't hesitate. He simply took my hand, guided me out of that suffocating room, and into the cold night air. Behind us, I could still hear Sharon calling out, "Sean, don't you walk away from me." But he didn't turn back. He didn't falter. The door closed, muffling her voice, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The drive home was quiet. My hands shook in my lap, my chest still tight, but when I glanced at Sean, I saw a fire in his eyes I'd never seen before. A line had been crossed, and for once, he wasn't going to let it slide. That night, something changed. It wasn't just about me versus Sharon anymore. It was about us, me and Sean, drawing a boundary so sharp it couldn't be ignored. And though I didn't know it yet, the fallout from that birthday would ripple through the family in ways none of us could have predicted. The days after Sharon's birthday were like living in the aftermath of an earthquake. Nothing looked the same. At first, there was silence. No calls, no texts. Then, slowly, the phone started buzzing, but not with support. It was cousins, aunts, even Sean's siblings, each with their own advice. Some told him he'd gone too far, that you don't turn your back on your mother. Others whispered that Sharon was devastated, that she cried all night after the party. A few even dared to suggest I had embarrassed her on purpose. Sharon, of course, wasted no time spinning her version of the story. In her retelling, I was the jealous wife, desperate for attention. Diane was the innocent victim of my insecurity. And she, poor Sharon, was just a mother caught in the middle. But the truth was, not everyone bought into her act. Quietly, behind closed doors, a few relatives reached out to me. They admitted they'd seen the way Sharon treated me, the way Diane was paraded around like royalty. "We always wondered how you managed to keep quiet for so long," one cousin confessed. Their words were a balm, proof that I wasn't crazy. Still, the pressure was heavy. Invitations stopped coming. Family dinners went on without us. Holidays were suddenly complicated. Sean stood firm, telling me over and over, "If they can't respect you, we don't need to be there." But I could see the weight on him too, the pain of being caught between his wife and his family, forced to choose one over the other. And Sharon wasn't done. If she couldn't control us with guilt, she'd try something else. And that something came in the form of whispered rumors, carefully planted seeds meant to turn the rest of the family against me completely. The isolation wasn't an accident. It was her weapon. When silence and guilt failed, Sharon reached for her sharpest weapon, manipulation. It started subtly, whispered conversations at family gatherings I wasn't invited to. A cousin calling me one afternoon, hesitant, asking, "Did you really forbid Sean from seeing his own mother?" My stomach twisted, because that was Sharon's narrative. She told anyone who would listen that I had brainwashed her son, that I was turning him against his family. Then the rumors spread further. She painted me as controlling, unstable, even dangerous. According to Sharon, I flew into jealous rages whenever Diane was around. She claimed I embarrassed Sean in public, that I isolated him from the people who loved him most. None of it was true, but repeated often enough, the lies gained a life of their own. Diane, of course, played her part with perfection. She didn't have to say much, just a sympathetic look, a well-timed sigh, a comment like, "I wish things were different. I don't want to come between them." Those quiet performances fed Sharon's story without her having to lift a finger. The effect was suffocating. Friends who once greeted me warmly now looked at me with suspicion. Invitations dwindled. And whenever Sean pushed back, Sharon twisted the knife deeper, crying on the phone, "She's destroying this family, don't you see it?" But the irony was cruel. The more Sharon tried to destroy me, the more she revealed her own desperation. People began noticing the cracks, the exaggerated tears, the convenient timing of her heartbreak, the way Diane always appeared just when Sharon needed a little more fuel for her pity party. And that shift, those tiny doubts in the minds of others, became the beginning of her unraveling, because lies can only hold power for so long before they collapse under their own weight. The turning point came unexpectedly. It wasn't a grand confrontation or a dramatic showdown. It was quiet, calculated, and utterly satisfying. Sean and I had finally decided we'd had enough. After months of whispers, manipulations, and humiliation, we drew the line. Social media blocks, phone numbers deleted, and a firm no-contact policy. For the first time in years, we were truly free from their manipulations. Sharon and Diane tried one last desperate move, a public ambush at the hospital, a stunt meant to guilt Sean into forgiveness. But this time there was no hesitation. Sean cut them off instantly, refusing to be drawn into their circus. Diane tried to plead. Sharon screamed, but it was like water off a duck's back. We walked away hand in hand, leaving their chaos behind. In the aftermath, something remarkable happened. The family that had once doubted me began to see the truth. Their comments shifted from gossip to quiet admiration. She stood her ground, one relative admitted. She didn't let them get away with it. And for the first time, I realized it wasn't about proving anything to Sharon or Diane. It was about protecting what truly mattered: Sean, our relationship, and our peace. We even pressed charges after the coffee incident, small but symbolic. It showed that manipulation and harassment have consequences, no matter how cleverly they're disguised. And while the fine and misdemeanor were minor, the victory felt enormous. As the days passed, Sean and I grew closer than ever. Boundaries were clear. Trust was rebuilt stronger than before. The toxic past could no longer touch us. And while Sharon and Diane fumed and flailed, their control over us dissolved completely. They had tried to humiliate, manipulate, and intimidate. And yet, in the end, it was they who were left powerless while we thrived. That's when it hit me. Justice doesn't always come in dramatic, instant revenge. Sometimes it comes quietly, in the form of strength, boundaries, and refusing to be dragged into someone else's chaos. And in that quiet, steady victory, I finally felt free.